Ant was the best player on the team, I think, by a long shot. Man, glimpses of his two-way play. Now, defense was a major problem for that team. It was historically bad on that end of the floor. But in terms of moments, and again, you've seen it up close a lot more than I have. You got reminded and kind of shown that Anthony Edwards has the potential to be a guy who is an absolute, just kind of hell on wheels on both ends of the floor. He ends up leading Team USA in scoring, was dominant at times. Some discussion within their journey, and this stuff really interested me. Steve Kerr initially talks about maybe bringing Ant off the bench. That doesn't happen. That was, I think, the wise move. He's going to start, and then he ends up, dominating quite a bit. Then you have internal, it seemed, discussions about just the balance between scoring and passing, and finding a way for him to kind of rise the guys around him while doing his thing himself. These themes, and this is extremely hyperbolic, I admit. I'm watching these themes, John, and then I'll be honest, I'm also looking at Ant, who has like almost a physical resemblance to a guy by the name of Michael Jordan. And I'm fascinated by the part of his journey that he is in, because people a lot of times do forget that before Michael was the guy. Again, disclaimer, hyperbolic. You don't talk about Michael with anybody, but for the sake of this discussion, before Michael was winning 6 titles, going perfect in the finals, he was the guy who was kind of butting his head up against the Pistons and other squads in the playoffs, and he was the score first, doesn't pass enough, selfish, allegedly selfish, young rising star. Some of those themes, I think, are there a little bit with Ant. Just in general, how did his journey hit you, and what do you think it means for him going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think that from a Timberwolves perspective, I don't know that they could have been any more encouraged than they were by what they saw, because one thing about, we've had this discussion the last week or so about maybe the national attention that does or doesn't come the Timberwolves way, and things like that. And I do think that there is an element of Anthony Edwards, the player, the teammate, all of those things that you just have to be around to really understand and appreciate and soak up. And it's not until he gets in the locker room, and it's not until he gets on the court with you, that you really understand, just the charisma, the leadership, the physical dominance that he's capable of displaying. And so that's why I do think that right away at the start of camp, Steve Kerr, did think about, hey, we're going to bring you off the bench and be like the spark plug. And it didn't take very long at all for him to realize, oh no, this is a different dude. And we saw really that kind of emerged throughout the tournament, is that he was the one guy who seemed to be most capable of taking the challenge on and bringing the fight to the other team, whether it was the comeback in Germany, whether it was, the loss and in 35 points, and really just being one of the guys who could have some success. And I just think that it was so clear that he was the guy. And part of the offshoot conversation of sharing the ball and things like that, I think, is just a 22-year-old learning how to play the game and empower teammates and do all of that. And
Right.
I don't think he's selfish. I don't think there's anything like that, but I do think that the playmaking aspect of things, there's more nuance and complexity to it. And sometimes that takes a little time for you to be able to pick your spots. And when is it time to take over and get your own shot? When is it time to get other people going? He showed some steps in that direction, but I think he still has some things to learn there. But overall, to see the way that he took charge of that team, and really separated himself from the rest of them, I think it's really good signs for the Timberwolves going into next season.
Jovan, I want to get your thoughts here too, but quickly, I will say to your point, John, if you're talking about like preferred profile of an elite athlete, I will every day of the week go with the guy who, like, it is a very good problem to have when you can dominate all the time by yourself, and you have to learn how to pull back. You have to learn how to share the ball differently. Because the vast majority of guys on the floor don't have that ability to go out and dominate. And there were, again, times in this tournament where it popped for me. And I mean, he had a great year last year, but as you know, in the context of that Timberwolves roster and that landscape, and the crunchiness with the Rudy Gobert arrival, in the Karl-Anthony Towns history, and Chris Finch trying to find his way, Ant wasn't always, having that wide open lane, so to speak, to do his thing.